Okay, can I have a motion to approve the
I
meeting?
can't, I was.
You weren't here.
I wasn't here.
So we're gonna table the minutes from November 7th. And we have, Mr. Smith would like to talk to us about Old Home Day.
Yes.
So go ahead up.
Did you say we're tabling until December 4th?
I'm sorry?
The next meeting, December 4th?
No, the approval of the minutes, because I can't approve them.
Right, till
To the next meeting, right.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you guys. Several people have come up to me and said, I think we should have Old Home Day again. And Old Home Day was very special to the townspeople of Holland because it brought people together. And I think Old Home Day will just show the community spirit that we have in town. You know, a lot of times we do things for the kids and for the seniors, but the people in the middle don't get the benefits of the town. And I think the people of the town should have a celebration of our town, that this town is a very nice town. You know, my mom taught me when I was a kid, when you live in a town, you give back to the town. You just don't take from the town. You give back when you live in a town. So that's my philosophy in life, that wherever I live, put my roots down, I gave back to it. So I'm.
So John, would you like to start a Old Home Town Committee, or?
Yes. And basically, it has to be, I believe it needs to be tax exempt and nonprofit, both,
Right.
so we can fundraise and give authority for people to give to us, that we have, you know,
That they
the
can-
authority to, you know, to do a fundraiser.
First thing,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, that's
Yeah.
right. The first thing I would do, John, I think Diane was involved in
Right.
the last Old Home Day, and you had mentioned another name.
Right.
I mean, I think the first thing that you would need to do
If
is
possible.
reach out to the people who were involved in the last Old Home Day. So that, I mean, we'll probably have to recreate the wheel, but at least
Right.
we may have a blueprint in
Right.
place so that it will be easier to recreate the wheel. If we get feedback and find out how it was done in the past. I remember I think the first year I moved into this town was the last Old Home Day. And I vaguely remember it, but it was a really, really nice event, and I thought I had a really good feeling about the town, and then it disappeared. So I love your idea. I just, in terms of the logistics and putting it together, I think the first place to start would be to talk to people who were involved in the last one, so we know what we were doing then, and maybe we can just sort of mirror what we were doing then in 2019, for 2019, for example. That's a starting point.
That would be great.
And I'm not sure if GoFundMe would work in this situation. In years, we never had that computer thing, GoFundMe, and
Oh, yes. Well, we probably can look into setting something up. I mean, there's different charities you can
Right.
set up, like on Facebook and stuff, so.
so since that time, you know, technology with the computer has changed tremendously. You know, basically, we was in the dark ages with the computer back then.
And in terms of the corporate structure, I mean, you're
Right.
talking 501c3 or 501c4. 501c3, tax exempt, and the contributions are tax deductible. 501c4, tax exempt, but the contributions are not tax deductible. The difference is the accounting in the approval of a 501c4 is a lot simpler than 501c3. On the other hand, you have an incentive, a tax incentive
Right.
under 501c3. So I'm very interested to
Right.
see how it was structured from a corporate perspective.
I'm not
Right,
sure.
We may be able to see if we can piggyback onto somebody else that's already at 5013C,
Yeah,
which we've done, I know, with different stuff in the past, so.
that's a great idea.
You know, I was involved with the fundraiser, and basically I solicit donations from different groups. When we had a fundraiser, I got the prizes for people back in the day.
Right, John, why don't you see if you can talk to the people who did it before? Let's see if we can do some research and see how it was on this end, like how it was, the donations were taken in, and we can look at that in the next month or so.
Right.
All right?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Well, now that Mr. Fancy is here,
Sorry.
that's all right, no problem. I was too late for the last one. Do you think we could approve the meeting minutes from November 7th because Larry wasn't here?
Yes, move to approve the minutes of November 7th.
So I second that. All in
Say
favor?
there. Aye.
All right. Did you get that, dear?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is the town clerk position. Sharon Ashley has left us. Gonna miss her greatly. She was an awesome asset to us. And I wanted to make an emotion to appoint Ginger temporarily until the next election.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That was easy. Can we go out of order? Because I'd like to let Pat get up and talk so we don't keep him from whatever he's got to do. So you're talking about MEMA CPOD discussion regarding emergency management?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just a handout that was presented to us when we went to the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, it's not color copies, I did the best I could.
Appreciate it.
So, thank you for letting me come. Chief Hoy did want me to just talk, before we get into the CPOD, about the emergency management director position. He has prepared a draft job description, and, you know, he would just like to let you know that he has done that. And I think the discussions with Janine, him, and I don't know if Dave talked to Chief Gagnon, but certainly it appears that it should be a stipend or some kind of professional, you know, and these are my words, not the chief's, but, you know, I kind of go back to like the veterans agent position. That's a stipend position. So it appears most towns, you know, have a position for emergency management director. I think Janine would probably agree with me. Probably when Holland first appointed, and I know when I first got here it was Mr. Kennedy, you know, these storms and things like that are becoming more prevalent, and unfortunately, you know, we're dealing with more natural disasters. So I think everyone's in agreement that we do need someone in that position. You know, right now, you know, we kind of have the MEMA bag downstairs. You know, if there was, if we had a winter storm and there were lines down and stuff like that, you know, the chief and Chief Gagnon would probably be handling the public safety aspect of the storm. So, you know, having that emergency management person who can assist, you know, in setting up shelters and supplies and stuff like that is really an important thing. And I think Janine can attest to this from the meeting, that it appears it's just not going to be, hey, we're making you emergency management director because we have to give it to you. There's going to be some more requirements. The state is really, you know, I think you guys understand, as states take federal money, there's new requirements for you to get trained. So that's kind of what the chief wanted me to express to you guys. That he feels it's probably sooner the better to try to, you know, address the, you know, the position and get someone in there, especially with, you know, with these storms coming. So-
Pat, at a high level, could you just briefly describe what you and the chief think the minimum qualification requirements would be for an emergency
Well-
management director?
Sir, I think this. I think there's great training with MEMA, and, I think it would be someone willing to put the time in and be able to go to the meetings and to, I will tell you, I'm very lucky to be able to do the veterans agent stuff because, I can kind of, maneuver my schedule. There's a lot of thought with the veterans agent thing that they like to get retired veterans or someone. I mean, certainly someone with a police or fire or some kind of background like that that's maybe retired, that would be willing to do it for a stipend, because, you're not really doing it for the money, you're doing it for the love of your community and, that you want to be helpful to people. So I think that's kind of our thought,
Right, and I think the chief said there's quite a few classes too that they can take, correct?
Yep, there are, and I think Janine will tell you, they're really, there's a lot of training out there that's free through the state. You just have to be available to do that. So, if you had someone that had a job during the day, it would, some of that training, unfortunately, most of the training is during the day, but, I think it needs to be, I think we all agree it needs to be a more of a not that when you were doing it, Larry, it wasn't, you weren't going to be professional, but you did it because, you needed someone in that position.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. That was just what you were saying, is that somebody has to do it, so I just
Yeah, no.
volunteered,
Right.
but I didn't have the time to take any of those classes.
Right,
you know.
so, I think, of course, it's tough for us to sit here and say that, we're asking you to, create not a new position, but create a stipend or paid position, but it really is needed. And I think, and again, I think Janine would agree, I think if whatever the salary was, I think there's going to be someone who's doing this job that's going to be able to do it, that can look for grants, that can look for opportunities to prepare us in case we have some kind of natural disaster. So I think it really, weighs your guys looking at getting this going sooner than later. Right now, the chief, Janine and I have kind of volunteered to the Chief Hoy, that we'll do, there's some stuff that they're recommending that we do, and it has to really be done. I think Chief Gagnon, made a great suggestion that maybe the powers to be, you guys all get together with Brimfield Wales and maybe do a regional thing, and that's above our pay grade. What I'm sitting here telling you is, right now, Janine and I and Chief Hoy, we're going to get through what we need to do for requirements, because there are some that we have to, information we have to get back to them in January. But, you guys really need to, kind of figure out what's going on with that position, So, and the chief wrote, I think, a great job description, so,
Do you have an idea of what you're thinking about in terms of a stipend, a dollar amount?
I think when you guys were here speaking the last time, if it was $1,000, I think that's kind of, it's like veterans agent. Most veterans agent get $300 a month to, so as Janine and I were talking, we thought I think Janine has access to maybe look up at some communities at the same size as us and see what they're doing, which would be a great guide for you guys.
Right.
And again, that's not out of my pay, but I think the common sense thing would be to do that.
Do you know what Wales and Brimfield are doing now?
I think Chief Hastings from the police department was at the meeting, the same meeting we were at. So I'm not sure if he was there for Wales or if he was there for Westfield State College. But it appeared in,
Munson, the fire chief in Munson, he explained when we were here talking about the Brimfield ambulance, he said he is the emergency management director and he makes $3,000 a year doing it. That's Munson, 3,000.
I know in West Brookfield, my previous police chief got a nice stipend too. So, the good thing about Holland is there's a lot of great people in Holland. There's a lot of great people, as John was talking about, that want to give back. And I think we could probably find someone who would be willing to do it, that, you know, in conjunction. And, you know, if you're giving a stipend, it's kind of an incentive to have to get your training and to do all this stuff, you know. So, you know, that's above my pay grade. What we're here today to talk about is, you know, it's called CPOD, and that's the acronym for it. And really, you know, Janine can kind of, you know, talk to you guys offline. Really what a CPOD is, it's really a resupply of essential items in case of natural disasters. Would you not agree, Janine? So I'm sure they paid someone a whole bunch of money to come up with the CPOD acronym. When I was looking at it, it kind of reminded me of doing humanitarian missions when I was in the military and stuff. So, you know, what they're recommending to each city and town is that we identify at least 1 or 2 sites that we could set up as a CPOD, and I think they're saying they want us to do like 3,000 people. Is that what they said?
They said 5,000.
5,000.
Yeah, with 146 cars per hour.
Right. So, you know, we don't have 5,000 people in Holland. You know, that's just, you know. So, what I took away from this meeting, and I think Janine and I were talking on the way back, they just want us to identify a couple areas that we could use in case, you know, if we had a bad winter storm and people were without, it's kind of like if what you're watching on the news, what they're doing up in Middlesex County, you know, they have the National Guard up there, and they're basically setting up, you know, they're going to parking lots and they're setting up to hand out blankets and heaters and water and, you know, and essential supplies. So, you know, and they talked about having an area that tractor trailers are accessible to, because, you know, you're getting supplies in, and, you know, moving, you know, people, being able to move people in that drive, walking people. So, you know, a lot of it depends on the type of, you know, natural disaster and what happens, you know, power loss, you know, do people, you know, lose water, you know, things like that. So I think the first part of the CPOD is for us to get together and to identify a couple sites, and there's a form in the back of the packet that they want us to get back to them in January. So, you know, I think at the minimum that, you know, Janine, myself, and Chief Hoy, and we'll speak with Chief Gagnon. We at least identify those sites, and whatever you guys decide to do, whether you regionalize, whether you advertise, or whatever, at least we're in compliance with MEMA. And, you know, it's really important, I think, for us to be in compliance with this, because once you do put someone in place, we might be able to get grants and things like that. And you know how it is with the grants. If you're not in compliance with certain things, you don't qualify for them. So,
So like if we became in compliance with this, then we could probably maybe get some grants to buy some of the stuff that we need for this.
yes, and they have a kit that they talk about, and they recommend, you know, that you keep, you know, certain things in a kit and stuff. And, you know, doing all this is like way down the line. I think for us, just identifying these sites right now is very important. And I think once, you know, as Chief Gagnon brought up a great point, is if we regionalize, then, you know, say you have to have in your CPOD kit, have to have 50 flashlights, and you have to have, you know, cones and this, that, or whatever. Then there's a regional. Holland could say, hey, I have the cones. Wales could say, hey, I have signboards. You know, Wales could be responsible. So there's a lot of advantage to doing, you know, it like that. You know, the cost to do, I think, one of those CPOD kits just individually for us would be very, very expensive if you went out to do it. So, you know, with a director or someone in that position, they could start seeking donations. They could start doing a lot of things, you know, so.
So then we need to meet with the 2 chiefs and stuff sometime in the near future and come up with some locations so that we become compliant with NEMA.
Or do we want them to make the suggestions?
Well, they could make the suggestions, yes.
Yeah,
And
I
then we
mean,
can meet with them and decide.
yeah, I think Janine has the email, which would better explain all this stuff, you know, I mean, you know, a couple places Janine and I thought about it, you know, the, truck area down at the end of Mashapog Road, you know, I mean, if you were needed to get tractor trailers in there and any kind of, you know, but then, you know, the church, you know, the church parking lot over here, you have, if you wanted vehicles to come through, you could come in one way and exit another. So those were
That's
just,
suggested.
yeah, you know, those were just two suggestions, you know. I mean, I don't think you want to tie up your community center or your schools in case you have to have emergency shelters. So, you know, those are just things that Janine and I were thinking of. The two chiefs may have different ideas on that, you know, so, you know, but those are the kind of things that we have to look at for these sites. And, you know, maybe there's better sites in Wales or Brimfield, you know. I mean, that's could be, you know, something too, you know. I mean, as we were talking, Janine and I, if you get hit by a winter, if Wales gets hit by a winter storm in Brimfield, chances are pretty good that Holland is going to have the same type of things, you know, down power lines and stuff like that. So, so that's kind of where we're at with the emergency management stuff.
With, Munson already has their emergency manager. Would he be willing to take on Holland?
Well, that's something you can ask for him, you know, to do. But again, I think if you're having a natural disaster in Munson, you're going to have.
The same one here.
So, you know, and the two chiefs may disagree with me, though I think I'm a little older than them, and I'm just going to say this to you. No one, this is what my Irish father used to say, no one takes care of family like family. And I'm not saying, because I don't live in Holland, I live in Barry, but I'd love to protect and serve here. But when you're asking someone to, you know, be multiple regions or districts, you know, how they're going to be spread pretty thin. So are you know what I'm saying? I
If
mean,
there's a natural disaster, they're gonna wanna deal with their own
Right.
town, or they're gonna wanna deal with
you
Holland.
know, so, and that's just my opinion, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think in something like this, for my opinion, for $1,000, I think you could find someone who would be Holland's, you know, director, and, you know, but that's just my opinion. And, you know, again, I think I remember when they had the tornado in Brimfield, I was working in West Brookfield, and I was actually on duty, and I remember my chief came over to Brimfield because he was like the on-scene commander right away, because he was like the nearest, you know, the nearest chief around. So I think that's stuff that you three need to decide, you know, what the best option is.
So then what would you suggest the next steps be, the immediate next steps?
Well, I think you guys have to meet with the two chiefs and decide what's best, what their recommendation is, and what's best for, look at, it's not like you have to fill it tomorrow or next month or whatever. I think what's going on the good thing is, right now, both chiefs have, the fire chief has deputy chiefs, the chief has 2 lieutenants, and Lieutenant Morehouse and myself. So if one of them had to be the acting emergency management director, you know, there's some wiggle room, and I'm sure you want to get it right, and you want to do it right. So, you know,
Right.
I think the requirements, I think personally, between Janine, myself, and Chief Hoy and Chief Gagnon, I think we can meet the requirements right now. And if there are any grants, then we'll just apply for them, you know. Janine's on the emailing list from Bruce, so I think, you know, I don't think you have to hire someone tomorrow. I think we can make it through the next few months for the storm, you know.
So we probably should make an appointment to meet with the two chiefs.
Okay, thank you for listening to me.
Pat, thank you for coming, bringing the information, and thank you for going to the training.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, we have business and liquor licenses that we have to approve.
Yes.
So we have the main attraction. Oh, it's all right here. Roberts Auto Clinic and Tire Center. Holland Rod and Gun Club. Diane's Villanova. PJ's Town Crier. Beer Convenience Store, oh, the New Holland Market, okay. I didn't know that's, and then there's different ones for all of them. Ray Cornier, Restful Paws. Okay. So we all have to sign them? Oh, we have to make a motion to approve these, I'm sorry.
Make a motion, we approve the liquor licenses for those who submitted.
It's the liquor and business licenses, and it's contingent upon the building inspector and fire inspection next week,
I
And payment.
and payment.
second the motion.
All in favor? No.
All in
Joe.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Go consist line, I'll get
All right.
confused.
Just got to confuse Janine. Is Brian Johnson coming?
He's not able to come, so I have the letter in there, and he wants me to relay to the board that he would like to suggest, a meeting with the select board and FIN board.
And who?
FIN
Finance.
board.
Okay. Janine, just so you know, these are all out of order.
For purposes of lack of confusion and all the numbers and the fees, I kept them separate for a reason.
Okay. No, I said I've got them all out of order,
Oh,
but the order
no,
you
I
had
don't
them
care.
in.
That's fine. I printed them out of order.
Okay, so, we have a letter from our tree warden. Dear Selectmen, there's a problem with dead and dying hazardous trees has come about because of disease and insect damage in recent years. The town offices, highway department, and tree warden have received numerous complaints regarding hazardous trees on town roads and town property. We are aware of this and beginning the process of addressing the problem. We are working with National Grid and discussing which trees are the responsibility of the power company. Unfortunately, their main roads of concern are North Wales Road, Brimfield Road, and Mashpog Roads. Because these roads carry the main power lines coming into Holland, the power companies will not be responsible for trees on any other roads unless the trees are overhanging the power lines. At this time, we have begun the process of putting together an inventory of hazardous trees along town roads. Primarily, tally is over 500 hazardous trees along just the major town roads. Fiscal budget 2019 budget does not have funding for tree work. Despite the lack of funding, we have had to spend over $34,000 from highway department budget to address some of the problem trees that were critical. The cost to deal with the problem includes tree removal and traffic details during cutting. This will increase the cost. Because there is a potential liability to the town, our next step is to meet with the finance committee and select board members to discuss how the finance the costing of the removal of the trees. We plan to have an inventory completed and cost estimate to present. We look forward to meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Please call me if you have any other further questions.
Bettina,
Uh-huh.
I'd like to tell you that he has a list of where these trees are, and if they're private property, town property, state property, he's gonna give me that list.
And they're spray painted orange and blue, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
So is he going out for estimates? Two?
That's what he said. I thought that's what he said. We plan to have an inventory complete and the cost estimate to present.
I would suggest that he also checks with the chief and see how much we're gonna have to spend in off-duty details for this.
Well, I wrote to Ann Goby and Todd Smola to find out if there were any funds available for this type of extra that we're experiencing, and she asked me some questions about if some things were town-owned property and private property. So he's gonna give me that, I'm gonna write them back and let her know what, you know, what's what.
Okay.
And then maybe there is something available for us.
That would be awesome.
That would be nice,
That would be.
because that's
We're experiencing a problem.
500 trees, that's gonna be a lot of money.
I heard, well, I had heard it was somewhere around $300,000.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Okay, next on the agenda is non-resident elected officials. We have an elected official who is no longer living in town and has registered to vote in another town.
Will he be,
She.
she, he, or whoever it is?
Well, right now, they're not a resident.
Well, then, they, legally, I mean, I don't think it's even a discussion. I mean, non-residents, regardless of the fact they may have been elected while they were living in town, once they move out, they are not a resident, and a non-resident cannot serve as an elected official.
So I
Period.
believe we need to write a letter.
You're looking at me like you disagree, Ernie? I mean, it's in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws, I mean,
There's nothing in our bylaws.
I believe there is.
I don't think there is anything in our bylaws.
Yeah, I got the bylaws. Let me look.
and then we have the letter that came back from the lawyer.
We got an opinion from
The lawyer says that,
Copeland and Page.
yes,
And
they cannot be on,
I mean, I even think it's in the Mass General laws, not
Sure,
necessarily.
I think it's in the Mass General laws, but I don't think it's in our bylaws.
Well, I'm not gonna move on. I'm just sort of
All right, so-
multitasking.
but I don't feel they should be on the board if, you can't run for office if you're not a resident.
I don't think I can be impartial in this. They're planning on moving back to the town.
Right.
We
but
have
if-
enough problem getting people to do good jobs around here.
But our problem is we then set precedents if we allow that to happen. So I could move out of town as selectman and stay on the board?
I mean, Ernie, even, I think I know who we're talking about now, and if it is who I think we're talking about, I understand that they will be moving back into town, but I just don't see a mechanism that allows them to continue to serve in an elected capacity while they're residents, while they're out-of-town residents, while they're a registered voter in another town. I just don't see it. I mean, I agree with you from a practical perspective that you're right, it's difficult to get people involved in town government, and to have to, remove somebody just because they're temporarily out of town, it's sort of a pain. But at the same time, unless somebody, if somebody can show me legally a way that we can accommodate the situation, I just don't see how we can continue to let it go on. I just don't see it from a legal perspective.
And that's what the lawyer said.
Please prove me wrong. I'm begging you to prove me wrong on this.
I don't think it's in our bylaws, but I'm pretty sure it must be in Mass General Law someplace.
Well,
It may not be in our bylaws because it's in Mass General Law, but I do think, I remember seeing it in the bylaws too. But I'm not gonna waste time in a public forum to go through the bylaws. I'll go through it in private and I'll see what I can find, but regardless, it's, Mass General laws supersede the bylaws anyways.
yeah. So I'm making a motion that we send a letter saying she has to step down.
Reluctantly second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Okay. The next thing is the Holland Community Center Heating Unit Darcy invoice. It hasn't gotten paid. It's from,
March. They started it in, I think,
March.
January, and the last service call was 3/20, I believe.
they called last week. Janine did send a letter back to them saying that, things had happened with it, then with Kelly leaving and her coming on, she didn't even know about it, so that we would be looking into it. Since then, she has had a conversation with them.
Yes, today and
Okay.
last week. Yes, and because of the work that they performed in trying to figure out what exactly the problem was with the heat exchange, there were some switches that were not working properly. So when they figured that one of the switches actually became, what's the word, tripped, they came in and they figured out that there could have been like some kind of other air intake, or the flame was not coming in where it should have been, and so it was like blowing out on the side, so it created some havoc with the system. So when they put in a new heat exchange, they put in a new limit switch, and the last time they came to service was on 3/20, so apparently, they want to know, like, at what point did it stop working and why they weren't notified. So I believe, according to the paperwork that Brenda wrote, she was either told or realized that it wasn't working properly and had Wheeler come and investigate it without calling Darcy first to give them, you know, maybe a chance to come and service it, look at it for free, or whatever, try to make good on whatever was failing. She called Wheeler and they, you know, told her what they thought was wrong. So that was one question that Darcy had. And the other question was, like, was it an operational issue? Was it a functional issue? When did it fail? They came on 3/20, she called on 3/27, so when did it failed, like, within a week's time. Now, after speaking with Darcy, when he first called, he's quite upset because it's been 7 months with no real correspondence to the situation or getting payment rectified or anything like that. So I told him that we would be meeting tonight and that the select board would come up with, you know, their findings, and I would let him know on Wednesday, the following day.
Plus
So that's where we're at with this invoice.
And didn't he say originally the first conversation you had with him, he hadn't been notified, so he didn't even know some of that stuff could have been under warranty?
Correct.
No? I don't
No.
know.
They replaced the heat exchanger,
Okay.
and that was the end of warranty, one replacement. So there was no warranty. And they left with the thing apart and never followed back on coming back to get it fixed.
Because you were there. You saw it.
Well, I've seen pictures of it where it was left apart.
I did mention that. I did mention that Brenda was not happy with how they left the unit area and how the unit cover was left with duct tape over it and such, and that, you know, Brenda wasn't pleased with that.
I would like to see us try and say, hey, we'll settle for 50%, but your service was inadequate when you left that machine apart. You never came back.
That looks like work I would do. Seriously.
It's my intention.
Did they provide any value with the work that they did? I mean, is there a dollar, a positive dollar value that we can assign to the work that they actually did, or did they just absolutely take it apart and not solve any problems at all? I mean, did we get any value from the work that they did?
Well, according to Darcy, we did. That, you know, they replaced that heat exchange, and that was not good before. They replaced a couple of switches that were not working because the unit itself was misfiring.
Does he acknowledge any responsibility on his own part? Jackie? I
I
mean,
mean, when I told him about the complaint, I think he was a little upset at the fact that he hasn't heard from anybody. So I don't know if he dismissed what I had told him about Brenda's complaints, but he just would like to know what the holdup has been.
did you talk to Kelly? Because I thought she was in contact with them, and I thought she was supposed to have called Copeland and Page to find out from a legal perspective what our options are given the situation. Did you speak with her?
I did,
Yeah.
and she never called for it.
Okay.
I think she was supposed to, but I think she left before she had a chance. So that ball was dropped there.
Well, probably the legal expense would equal.
The cost,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe just to put it behind us, you're suggesting paying the 50% of it?
yeah, well, I'll
Do you want to contact them and see if they'll take 50%?
I'll see if we can get a conference call set up with them, and I'll offer.
Well, why don't we make a motion so that you have the authority that the board has authorized the payment of 50% of the bill?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll leave that with you.
I got it back again.
Sorry, sorry. The next on the agenda was to appoint Rich Povaria to the ZBA. And Janine didn't have anything, but I guess Don Beal didn't have my email address, so I went to my personal email. So it asked us to appoint him. He's been going to ZBA meetings. The only thing that bothers me is that somebody said he's been acting at the meetings, and I'm hoping he hasn't, because he's not been appointed and he hasn't been sworn in,
I don't know anything about it.
so.
Motion to approve the two appointments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I want to congratulate Andy Harhay for successfully completing the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission's Achievement Certificate. So he took some training, and I guess he completed the whole program. That's awesome.
Good.
And I didn't write down the warrants, so Janine, I'm sorry, you'll have to pull the numbers from
Okay.
her. And I guess we have no public access since there's nobody here. And I want to wish everybody in the town, you guys, all a very happy Thanksgiving.
That's two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You enjoy it. And I will ask for motion to adjourn at 6:45.
You could do it. You can make the motion, Ernie.
Motion to adjourn at 6:45.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.